Israel says its main objective is to wipe out Iran's nuclear capabilities. But what about the risks and dangers that come with striking and attacking nuclear facilities? For more on this, let's turn to Jim Smith in the United Kingdom. He's a professor of environmental science at University of Portsmouth. Jim, you've studied Chernobyl, you've studied Fukushima. How worried should we be about risks of contamination and leaks from Israeli attacks on Iranian nuclear facilities?
So far, the attacks have been confined to uranium enrichment sites. So last Friday, there was an attack on the Tant uranium enrichment site, and there's been talk of an attack, although no bombs have dropped on Fordo, which is the main Iranian nuclear enrichment site. There's talk of attacking that as well. From an environmental contamination perspective, I'm not so worried about that, because by its nature, a uranium enrichment site contains pure uranium metal. And that actually, it may sound strange to say this, but uranium in itself isn't particularly radioactive compared to some other radioactive elements. So I've studied Chernobyl for a very long time, and there's several tons of uranium from the reactor in the exclusion zone around Chernobyl. But we don't worry about the uranium. We worry about the things that uranium breaks up into when it's in a nuclear reactor.
So let me get this. Make sure I understand this. So if the Israelis are hitting, bombing enrichment facilities, you're not worried about that?
No, from an environmental contamination perspective, I'm not. So the enrichment facilities are used to take. So natural uranium consists of two different types, and one is suitable for use in reactors and the other and nuclear bombs, and the other isn't. And so what they're doing is they're taking natural uranium, which has about 0.7% of the useful uranium, and they're enriching it up to, for nuclear reactors, up to about 3 to 5%, and for nuclear weapons up to 90%. Although so far, apparently they've only achieved about 60% enrichment. And so these sites just contain uranium. And when we're looking at environmental contamination, for example, after Fukushima or Chernobyl, we're looking at what are called the fission products of uranium. So the things that uranium splits up into in a reactor or in a bomb. And they're much more radioactive, or they're much more densely radioactive than uranium itself.
I'm just curious, Jim. So why did IAEA Director Rafael Grossi, I believe it was this week, he issued a statement and he said he's worried about these strikes?
Well, we're worried about any strikes on any nuclear facilities, but in terms of risk, we're much more worried about strikes on working nuclear reactors, for example, because in a working nuclear reactor, it's got uranium, but it's also got all the fission products, all the things that uranium splits up into when it's in a working reactor. The enrichment sites don't have that.
Understood.
And so we wouldn't expect. So if it was a working reactor, you could get a loss of cooling of the reactor, and that could lead to an incident like, for example, the Fukushima incident in Japan, and a spread of the fission products, the things that uranium splits up into around the environment. But in an enrichment site, you don't have those fission products.
All right, and very quickly, Jim, are there safeguards in place, even in enrichment facilities, that if attacked would mitigate the damage?
So of course, I mean, there should be, and I assume there will be, that the main thing to avoid in an enrichment site is that you don't get, so what you need to make a bomb, or a nuclear explosion, or a criticality incident where something overheats, what you need is lots of uranium in one place, lots of enriched uranium in a small place, and in any enrichment facility you would expect, and I expect that to be the case in Iran, is that the uranium that has been enriched is safely kept and stored in appropriate amounts, so that couldn't happen under an attack.
All right, Jim Smith, thank you so much.
Thank you.